It's showtime.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
You know, the right to bear arms is because that's the last form of defense against tyranny.
Washington is fundamentally corrupt. There are more words in the IRS code than there are in the Bible.
Made in America, heard round the world. You're listening to Blunt Force Truth. I'm Chuck Woolery, along with my co-host Mark Young. And I'd like to welcome all the Easter worshipers today. You know who you are, and yes, you know what you are.
I worship Easter all the time, Chuck. Chuck, on today's show, we're going to talk about Russian collusion is back.
Well,
and the fact that you can now worship Easter, you can now worship a day, and the Washington Post has declared that dogs are racist. We have this and many other topics. Your camera just spun up there. What happened?
Well, I have both dogs visiting this morning. I have a feeling that
one of them is in the dogs.
Yeah, they're both back there screwing around with all my electronics. Sorry about that.
All right.
Didn't mean to break the momentum.
All right, so Russia is back.
Yeah, you know, they just won't let it go, will they? You know, it's what they've lived on for the last 2 years. It's desperate. It's so sad and it's funny, and it's just all kinds of emotions wrapped up into one. You're looking at these people wide-eyed, saying, trying these defenses that are just so unbelievable, so absurd, and trying to feed their audiences with what they've been feeding them. And for the last 2 years, it's already been vomited up, but they're just going to go back like a dog returns to its vomit. They just go back and start eating it again and throwing it out there again. It's amazing to me that people would even buy that.
Well, they are now back on the thing that the Mueller report shows that the president benefited from Russian interference. That the president
in what way? How?
Because they spent $180,000 on Facebook ads, Chuck.
I mean, seriously, though, nobody ever says, well, how did he benefit from it?
$180,000.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
In a campaign where almost $2 billion was spent, Russia spent $180,000 on Facebook ads, with 2/3 of them focused on supporting the president. 1/3 of them was focused on supporting Hillary.
Right.
So on balance, the Russians helped the president with $60,000 worth of Facebook ads in a $2 billion campaign. That's not even a rounding error.
It doesn't matter to Democrats whether it's a rounding error or the mainstream media. They're just going to carry this water as far as they can until the pail is jerked out of their hands by the king. I can understand why viewership is dropping off at MSNBC, at CNN. I mean, these people have to be terribly disappointed, and yet these Brian Stelters of the world are coming on and claiming they were right all along and they don't have to apologize for anything because it really did happen. Do you believe for 1 second that Mueller, with all of those Democrats, some who contributed to Hillary, some who were there, I think Weissman was there for her party to accept the presidency if she got it, and obviously she didn't. So he's got all these Democrats on there, and you think that for a minute, if they couldn't have convicted Donald Trump some way, or at least look, there's one word that Mueller is using that you cannot use as a prosecutor, and yet he did throughout this thing, and that is exonerate. Prosecutors do not exonerate. Prosecutors charge you with a crime.
Right. It's not their
job. A jury
to
exonerates you, or your defense exonerates you, or a judge exonerates you. The prosecutor doesn't. But it doesn't matter to these geniuses on these panels at CNN and MSNBC and the Wall Street Journal and New York Times and WAPO. And I mean, they just keep going on and on. It's like nothing's really happened. Nothing's going to get in our way. We don't need to listen to this stuff. It was all manufactured anyway. Mueller's not what we thought he was, and now we hate him. And we love Jim Comey, but we hate him too. And it's like they're all over the map. They're everywhere.
Well, Mueller is now part of a cover-up. Barr is now just a shill for the president.
Yeah, it's not, it's really very funny. You're never a shill or a cover-up until you go against the orthodoxy of the left. Then you become a shill and a cover-up. Prior to that, you're the hero.
Well,
Good
like
one everyone should listen to.
Well, like the name of today's broadcast, which is "When you come at the king, make sure he's dead."
Ah, that's Shakespeare something. Is that
Yes.
Beth, Othello? What is that?
I believe it's Macbeth.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, they have come for the king, and he isn't dead.
No, he's not even wounded, frankly. I mean, legitimately, he's not wounded, because the Mueller report, for what it was, as I can glean all the information, I've listened to Mark Levin, I've listened to Rush Limbaugh, I've listened to people who really know what they're talking about. And I think Mark Levin is one of them, since he, worked at the as the assistant to the DOJ. Mm-hmm. Anyway, the thing of it is, he knows this legally, and he's looking at it saying, look, the Mueller report, the first part, volume 1, as he put it, is legal, and there is no collusion. Now, they still say there's collusion, but there is no, and there has been no. If they could have found collusion, they would have done it, and they would have done something about that. But then you get to the second part of it, which is an op-ed for the New York Times. I mean, it's like gossipy and he said, she said, and all this kind of stuff. There's nothing to it.
Well, their new angle too, Chuck, is that Mueller operated under the wrong thinking that you can't indict a sitting president. So therefore, with that in his mind, because they're reading Mueller's mind now. So with the idea that you can't indict a president in his mind, he wrote a report that said, well, I can't indict him. So not that I don't have evidence, I just can't indict him. Mm-hmm. Now, Alan Dershowitz.
Well, look, let's put Alan Dershowitz in perspective. This guy voted for Hillary, okay?
Right. He's a classic liberal. A
lifelong liberal. And highly respected in, I guess, every corner. I don't know. I don't agree with him politically, but, everybody respects him. He has been vehement against what happened with Mueller.
Dershowitz has written an introduction to the Mueller report. And in his report, he pulls out 10 or 15 things that Mueller did wrong, that he said it is flat out wrong. So I need people to understand, if you don't know who Alan Dershowitz is, he's one of the greatest legal minds alive. He's a Harvard professor. He is a far left liberal. But what Dershowitz has always had the ability to do is to set his political agenda aside and follow the law. Dershowitz is somebody who knows the law inside and out. He loves the law. He follows the law.
Unlike Jeffrey Toobin and a bunch of these other people. Go ahead.
So Dershowitz was a regular guest at MSNBC and CNN.
Oh, yeah. Was is the operative word.
He is persona non gratis at both of those places. He ran into Jeff Zucker, who he said, I confronted him and said, you've banned me from being on the air now that I don't agree with you. And Zucker said, oh, no, that's not the case. We'll have you on. He said, I have still never been on. And at one point, they had him booked. And he said they called him up and said, oh, we've got to cancel you because we're getting our legal opinion today from Michael Avenatti.
I remember that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, could you back the wrong horse and still come out a winner? I mean, here's CNN backing Michael Avenatti. Brian Stelter's all over the place saying this guy should be running for president. And how can they possibly? They are so hollow over there when it comes to anything but opinion that it's ridiculous. And people still listen. So for some unknown reason.
What kind of idiot would ever say, Alan Dershowitz, we're setting you aside because we've got the opinion of Michael Avenatti coming on? I mean, that's before he got indicted. Yeah. We're going to take the greatest legal mind alive. We're going to set you aside because we have an ambulance chaser and a creepy porn lawyer who's going to come on and give us his brilliant legal analysis.
Well, I'm not sure Alan Dershowitz is the greatest legal mind alive. He may be, but he's certainly one of them.
I would say best professor.
Maybe. I don't know. That could be true. But the point is, it doesn't matter to the uber left. It just doesn't matter to any kind of left liberal outlet, no matter what. They just manufacture news day in and day out. If it's not there, they'll just make it up, send it out.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I'm going to switch subjects here. I want to ask you, Easter just passed. Did you go out and worship Easter?
Yes, I did worship Easter. I was an Easter worshiper.
You were an
Better,
Easter worshiper.
better known as a Christian.
Okay, what is up with this?
It's so obvious. It's so obvious. The word Christian even sticks in their throat. It doesn't even make it to their mouth. I don't know why. It's like progressivism. I understand it. I know what it is. And one of the tenets of it is you have to get rid of the faith. People have to have faith in government, not faith in God. It's like they don't want you to pray for rain. They want you to call Washington. So this whole movement, it had been subtle up to this point, and now it's just so obvious. And the interesting part to me is, and then I do not understand this, is that they will give the radical Muslims any kind of break they possibly can, but they won't give breaks to Christians or to Jews. And I'm wondering myself, if you are a bought and paid for, sold Christian in the name of Christ, and you're a Jew who is a good Jew, how could you possibly be a liberal lefty? I mean, I just don't understand how they all three go together. It doesn't make any sense to me. But I'm sure that there are people who have their own feelings about that.
So when the attacks happened in New Zealand, when that guy shot up a couple of mosques,
right,
he was called a far-right Christian extremist.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He was a Donald Trump worshiper.
Mm-hmm.
And the victims were Muslim worshipers.
Right.
They weren't Ramadan worshipers. They were Muslim worshipers, right?
Well, descriptions are interesting to people who don't pay attention. And when you get along like we are, and the people who listen to us, perhaps, we are so far advanced as the average person who listens to headlines or passing fancies of the mainstream media. So we don't really pick up on the subtleties of what's going on. And sometimes it's very, very subtle. Sometimes it's just right in your face. And you think, well, boy, that's extreme. They must know what they're talking about, because it's so bizarre. It's so ridiculous that you wouldn't believe for a minute these people would go out on that kind of limb and carry a saw with them. But they do it every day. They do it every minute of every day.
You need to parse every word that the Democrats are saying and that the mainstream media is using, because words have meaning, and they are using words as weapons, and they're using words to distort the truth. And there is no greater evil when you think of communication than the person who knows how to twist the truth into a lie.
That's
so
true.
Everything they do is not always a blatant lie. It is a twist of the truth, which makes people think there's a shred of truth to this comment.
Well, in order for, let's be honest, if it's a really good lie, you have to have some truth involved in it, or it just wouldn't stand.
So now these people are Easter worshipers. They're not Christians.
How weird is that? Isn't that odd? I mean, I don't know what think tank thought that up.
It started with Obama. He was the person who came up with that. Hillary followed. Julian Castro followed him.
Julian Castro from San Antonio?
Yes.
Yeah. He has
and the media, and the media piled on that, yes, they're Easter worshipers. And as anybody knows, we don't worship Easter.
Yeah, no. Easter worshiper is somebody who worships a bunny and Easter eggs. I mean, give me a break. It's like a Santa worshiper.
Now, the Islamic leader who's behind the Sri Lanka Easter worshiper attack.
Yeah, I've seen that guy.
Okay, this guy preaches hate and violence on YouTube.
Yeah, but conservatives are taking off, but this guy's allowed to just rant. What is that all about?
So we checked yesterday.
Who owns YouTube, by the way? Who owns it?
Google.
Google owns YouTube, right.
And as of yesterday, all of this guy's videos preaching hate and destruction and death to Christians is still up.
Well, does anyone in Congress, when these guys go before them, and they've been there before, ever challenge them on that? Because they do it all the time. And
Senator, that doesn't happen. There may have been a few people on our staff
right. overlooked
who express some things, but it's not the belief of the company. And there's no such thing as shadow banning. That's tinfoil hat stuff that doesn't actually exist.
And yet
well, thank you. I'll say that must be the truth. And thank you for being here.
Yes, for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Boy. Oh, well,
So-
we fight this every day at one level or another. And, folks, all we're really trying to do is emphasize the truth that's already out there. If you haven't heard it, if you don't know it, we're just trying to emphasize and support it and let you know at least where we stand on this. And I know I come from a very rare place. I was looking at John Voight has been supporting Laura Ingraham for apparently she had done something. I didn't catch this on her show, but she'd done something about, what's his name? Nipsey Hussle.
Yes,
Guy, he was
Hussle.
shot. I thought it was Nipsey Russell for the longest time.
No, he misappropriated Nipsey Russell's name.
Yeah, right. I just took Nipsey Russell's name and made it something else. So I don't know who this guy is. He must be. Was he a rapper?
He is a rapper.
Yeah. Was he a very famous rapper?
No.
No. He was an up and coming rapper. Okay.
Like yourself.
I'm an up and coming rapper, right? Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, she said something that they felt was inappropriate, and so everybody came down on her. All the rappers got together and said they were going to boycott her, and they got to get with all the advertisers and boycott her. And John Voight came to her rescue, which was kind of nice of him to do. Not that John Voight is a rapper or a up and coming rapper, but
Well, I wanted to express something to people. I want people to think of something, and then we'll get back to some news items here. When we look, I want to get people to look through history. When we look through history, the times when America gave up its freedom, gave up its sovereignty, was during wars.
Exactly right.
So we go back to, let's get back to that Woodrow Wilson period, back to 1913. We get 100 years back. What comes in, what comes in behind that? World War I, where we gave up freedom. World War II, which was really the continuation of World War I.
Right.
And World War II, we gave up enormous sovereignty and freedoms because we all wanted to be a part of the war effort.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard to unring those bells. Now, we got out of that and we went into the Cold War. And in the Cold War, we gave up more freedoms. I mean, to the point of, as kids, people our age, we used to sit under our desk every month with our heads, hands over our heads, because that was going to protect you from a nuclear bomb. Then we got into terrorism, and what did we do? We went and passed the Patriot Act. So now we gave up freedom to get on an airplane and taking our shoes off and allowing our telephones to be tapped, and things like FISA warrants that we now know can be abused. That firewall has been breached, and it was used against the president. So war is how government wrestles away our freedom. What I'm proposing, Chuck, is the Green New Deal is the left's new World War III. And if you think about it, everything in the new Green Deal.
Well, they said it was more important than World War II.
Correct.
So they did make the association.
And they make the association of the New Deal, that it's a wartime effort. And you hear them make the efforts of how we built we defeated Germany. They make those efforts, and how we rose to the occasion and, and became the arsenal of democracy, and so on and so forth, so that we can rise up to this. The reason war works is because war gives us an existential enemy that we're forced to unite as a people. We're forced to say we have to give up our individual freedoms because we need to survive as a country. Mm-hmm. We now live in the most peaceful times imaginable. We think it's not peaceful because we have 24/7 news reporting disasters. But in reality, less people are starving, more people are working, more people are being fed, more people are being given medical treatment, less people are being murdered, less people are being killed. The world is actually the safest it's ever been.
But that's what's real. That's not what's being reported.
That's the reality. So what they need is World War III. And what I'm saying is the Green New Deal is World War III. It is the existential threat, which is the word you hear them use. It is the existential threat that is threatening the nation, where we must be willing to give up our freedom, give up our liberty, give up our sovereignty, so that together we can defeat this enemy.
Give up our cars, give up our homes, give up heating and cooling, give up. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's
But
insane.
I want people to think it's not real. It's a fake World War III. You look at this.
Well, it's on a
lunatic-
fake premise. It's just like the Mueller report. It's all a fake premise. I mean, what was the Mueller report for? Who started? Why did it even start? It wasn't anything. It was in search of a crime. The Green New Deal is in search of a problem.
Well, they need 10 years of Trump's tax returns. For what?
Well, just so they can defeat him. That's all. Any way they can, smear him. It's a smear job is what it is.
Right,
And
but
you know
what,
the interesting
what is
thing-
the legitimate investigation that requires that? It's in search of a crime.
In search of a crime, right? Yeah, exactly. But it's the thing I don't think most people understand. They probably can't get their head around it because we don't think we're that important. If they can do it to him, they can do it to us.
Absolutely.
Each and every individual of us, they can do that to us. And ultimately, if the status went out, that's exactly what they will do to us.
Well, that's the Green New Deal. It is World War III. It is nothing but an attempt to wrestle our liberty away from us.
But the interesting thing about this is all UN, funded. A lot of it. It's a universal kind of movement. It's not just a movement here in the U.S. It's a movement in every country we know, with the exception of maybe China. But it's a movement that's worldwide. So it's really hard for people to get their head around and say, well, if the entire world is for this, how can it possibly be a hoax? It must be real. And
there's a consensus.
There's a consensus, right? Science is not a consensus, by the way. But anyway, and you get these people on who really know their stuff, and they talk about global warming or climate change and completely debunk all these hypotheticals that are running around that the left has built its case on, and they're like dismissed. Just you're wrong, or you don't know anything, or you're a troglodyte, or however they put it. I mean, these guys are scientists, but they don't take their word for it.
Well, you're not woke.
Whatever the hell that means. Is woke an acronym?
Well, to be woke, of course, is to be enlightened.
Yeah,
it's
who
like
came
the
up with
term
woke. Please.
I'd have to look and see who started using it. It's like the term that they use, speaking truth to power.
Mm-hmm.
What is speaking truth to power? Speaking truth to power was a phrase that came up, which was used to go against the existing established power. Speaking truth to power. It is the dumbest use of a group of words that I can imagine. Speaking truth to power. So look at this nitwit in New York. Sticking with the Green New Deal for a minute here, Chuck. De Blasio is now going to outlaw glass and steel in the construction of high rises. So think about this.
Can he
New
do
York,
that, by the way?
Well, he can control the building permits.
Mm-hmm.
So think of this. First, Cuomo and New York decide. Think of this idea. I just think of that, how stupid this is. I know how we'll get extra money. We're going to create a millionaire tax in New York, and we're going to tax all the millionaires an extra tax. And all of a sudden, the millionaires all start moving their addresses to Florida, because it never occurred to anyone in New York that millionaires have two homes, right, or can afford to move, or can relocate. So now they end up with billions of dollars in less revenue. And their solution is they blame the state of New York for secretly trying to steal citizens. So
to build the state of New York,
or the state of Florida. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
New York's blaming Florida for citizen stealing. Mm-hmm. So, okay, that failed. So I've got an idea.
So what are these people? Are these citizens in jail in New York, and they come and break them out of jail?
I guess. So now the idea is, let's make it so you can't build a high-rise building with steel and glass in New York, because apparently, you're going to build it out of wood now?
I have no idea. There is still concrete still left.
You could use some concrete, but what are you going to support the concrete with? Where's the superstructure for the concrete?
I have no idea. There's no steel. Maybe they'll use some kind of exotic outer space thing space aliens have.
Well, it's the liberals. They could be making it out of paper mache or macrame or something. But at any rate, he's also saying that he's going to create massive $1 million fines to put on companies that currently have glass and steel buildings. So what he just did, think about this, what he just did was he just single-handedly in one press release destroyed the property values of high-rise buildings in New York. Now, if you're an investment company, are you going to buy a high-rise building in New York now?
No, probably not. Until they vote this guy out and change everything. And it's, how difficult it is to change policy once it's been put into place. And all this is directed at Trump because he's a builder. We know that. It has very little to do with anything but Trump.
So you're not right. You're not going to buy a building in New York. If you're a company that's in the business of real estate, New York is not going to be the place you're going to want to put your investment right now.
It's funny. They just keep shooting themselves in the foot over and over and over again and blaming someone else for it and wondering why it continues to go downhill. But it's never their fault. It's always the fault of the citizen, the big industry, whatever they take aim at. It's their fault, but it's never the fault of the people who make policy, which is what we hire them to do. And then when we're disappointed in them, they point the finger at somebody else. It's always that way.
Well, I've got some more news stories, but before I jump into that, if you happen to be watching or listening live on Twitter right now, don't forget to reach down, hit that follow button. And Rusty, do we have any questions or comments from the audience we want to cover?
Well, let's take a look here. We got quite a few. One guy from New York says, it looks like MAGA people love Trump more than America.
MAGA people love Trump more than America?
Yes.
That's just an idiotic statement.
Well, yeah, I won't even address that because it's stupid. I'm sorry, whoever you are, but MAGA people love Trump more than America.
Well,
That's crazy.
but if you think about it, though, a lot of times the left, they fall in love with their candidates more than they fall in love with the party or the policies or anything.
Yeah, okay. That's kind of a projection, Rusty. Now that you clarify that, I get it. Yeah, they do that. They are Obama lovers. They love him. He can't do any wrong. And of course, the left looks at us and says, "Oh, these people all love Trump. No matter what, you're kissing his butt. You're doing this. You'll do anything. No matter what he does, it's right." That's not true. If he does something that I'm not happy with, I will criticize him. But so far, he's been pretty good. In fact, he's been way past my expectations. But that has nothing to do with loving Trump over America. You can't. I'm not sure that people understand you can love the country, but I'd like to see what I'd like to have people in positions like. I'll give you an example. Here comes along Herman Cain. Now, Herman Cain has already been head of the Fed in Kansas City, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, head of the Fed. Okay, so not as if he hasn't been there, doesn't know something. So immediately, he's set up by Trump because he's a conservative to go into the Fed. And on target, on time, every rhino, every Mitt Romney, all of the same crew go after Herman Cain. And the Democrats go after Herman Cain, and they start pulling him down to where he finally gives up and says, okay, look, never mind. Pull my name. I'm not going to be part of this because he's a conservative. And that shows me, to this gentleman's observation, I am more interested in the conservative Constitution than I am Donald Trump or anybody else. I'm also interested in people who support it, and Donald Trump, in my estimation, does. But the real story is the minute conservatives come into any kind of prominence in our government, they are immediately attacked by both sides, which is very telling to me.
Isn't also the difference, gentlemen, that when a Democrat does something wrong, they all circle the wagon to protect the Democrat politician. If a Republican does something wrong, man, they're gone.
Yeah, it happens all the time. That's true. But when you have the mainstream media behind you, you can do just about anything you want to do and get away.
Well, yeah,
It's
look at
gotta
the
be pretty
difference.
extreme.
Who is the congressman that the Republicans stripped him of all of his things? Was that King? The Republicans stripped him.
King
Now,
of Iowa.
Right.
Yeah. Now, Ilhan Omar can come out and say God knows anything,
Mhm.
and she
Nothing.
gets praised for it. There's no retribution. There's no cost for doing that.
There's a
But
whole love of radical Muslim, there's a love of radical Muslims on the left that I don't understand. No, I just don't understand it. I don't get it. And I don't get why other people go along with it. It just drives me nuts.
All right,
They are
here's another one.
hypocrites.
I'm sorry. Mike Gabriel asks, do you believe Trump will get to fulfill his campaign promise and lock up crooked Hillary?
I don't think Trump ever said that he was going to lock. Everybody at those rallies always said, lock her up, lock her up. I don't think Trump ever said lock her up. And I don't think that she ever will be locked up, if you want to know the truth. I think Barr is really upset about everything he sees once he got into position to see it, if he didn't prior to being there. I mean, he knows a lot more than we know, being head of the DOJ. But he said that he's going to look into this. I believe you that he will. I doubt very seriously if Hillary Clinton will be going to jail. I just don't see that on the horizon. In fact, I'll be surprised if anybody goes to jail or to prison. They may deserve to, but they never do. And so I don't get my hopes up that I'm not hoping that everybody gets punitively punished and goes to prison, but they certainly need to be called out, put on the carpet, and Americans set straight as to what really happened. Not what they think happened, not what someone's told them that happened, but what really, really happened. That has to come about, and hopefully it will. And there'll always be those who will pay attention, and those who don't, and those who will believe it, and those who don't. It's just the way we're made. So, I don't think Hillary's going to jail.
I mean, the stuff these people are willing to do right now.
Hillary should have gone to jail for a lot of things other than this, but go ahead.
You've got 18 states right now that have bills in their state legislature that are going to make it mandatory for anyone running for president to disclose 5 years of their tax returns before they can be on the state ballot.
This is very interesting. I'm gonna just punch this just a minute. If you're a politician and you grow up wanting to be a politician, and you run for, state legislature, you run for county commissioner or whatever it is, and you start to build your reputation like almost every politician does. And then you run for Congress, and then you run for Congress again, and then you run for the Senate, and then you run for Senate again. You have built up your entire life around being a politician. So your finances, everything is just scrutinized from the day you got to get into politics, that you can't be impeached on any level. Now, you take someone out, our founding fathers said, a citizen politician, that is not a politician, but a guy is a citizen and fulfills that role in our government, whatever it is, for a short period of time or a long period of time, depending on what, how long the people want to keep him. Then they are under scrutiny. They're not prepared to go back through their whole life and say, well, here, let's see what this is and what that is. I mean, God, a guy like Trump, can you even begin to imagine what a multi-billionaire international builder has in his portfolio? I mean, I don't think there's anybody in Congress that could begin to understand it, number one. But number two, just to expose everything, he wasn't prepared to do this. He didn't prepare his life for this. He prepared his life for something far different and said, I can step in and help our nation. This is what I'm going to do. So he sacrificed his salary. He sacrificed his business. He's sacrificed everything, including his family to a certain extent. And now they want to punish him for it by going back and picking something out of his records. But the point is, he didn't prepare his life to run as a politician. like these other people
Well,
do.
of course not. The only people that are running, the majority of people running for politics today, Chuck, as you're pointing out, are people that have done nothing.
Yeah, they've been in politics all their life.
They've done zero.
I know.
You look at Bernie Sanders. Bernie's going to do all of these amazing things, right? But 30 years in Senate, and the only 2 bills he's ever passed were to rename 2 post offices.
I know Bernie hasn't done anything and by the way, won't do anything either if he gets to be a president of the United States. Maybe some bad stuff, but he won't get anything done.
Why would anyone believe he's going to do anything when he's done nothing so far?
I think Bernie jumped the shark, frankly, the last time. I could be wrong, but
okay, what has Elizabeth Warren done? She's got
Nothing.
a whole list of what she's going to do.
She's an academic and a politician.
But I mean, they do nothing, but they tell
talk a
you they're
lot.
going to do something because they are hypocrites. Let me give you an example of hypocrisy to the max. Now, I know you give, as a rule, you usually give 10% of your income to the church, to causes. That's what most conservatives do. Okay? Go through this list with me here. Let me grab my list here. So Bernie Sanders.
I have a theory
Bernie
about
Sanders,
this, by the way.
Bernie Sanders and his wife gave roughly 3% of their $600,000 income last year, less than 1% of his multi-million-dollar income. Okay. Kamala Harris and her husband, who made $2 million, gave 1.4% to charity. Elizabeth Warren, who made $1 million, keep in mind, you're a public servant, made $1 million. She gave, what did she give? 5%. And Beto O'Rourke, who shows income of $370,000, he donated an entire $1,166 to charity, but he qualified that because he said the gift of himself that he is giving America is the greatest gift that he could give.
And this is my point. The Democrats really believe that they are a charitable organization. And so they give to each other, they give to themselves and consider it charity. I mean, look at the Clintons. Who did they give to? The Clinton Foundation.
Well, here's something for you.
And by the way, I don't really like this climbing on your moral high horse and saying you didn't give as much as I did and I gave more than you did, so it makes me a better person, all that kind of stuff. I really don't like that. But I also don't like the left saying you're no good because you don't give or you're not good. You know, it goes both ways, but I think this is a very weak argument on either side, claiming that you don't give enough to charity and all of that kind of stuff. That's up to the individual. It's strictly your personal ideas, what you're going to do. And I don't think that's how you measure the quality of a person.
But I think when Bernie Sanders is saying that millionaires are evil,
No, I know.
then why did you pay the minimum tax and why do you donate nothing to charity?
But we've been over this before that, you know, all of these millionaires and billionaires are always claiming that they don't get taxed enough. And it's the cover they hide under that they never have to pay for. It's their protection.
Now, remember, the Democrats want you to believe that the Republican Party is the party of the rich, right?
Well, it used to be.
Now,
that
here's
was
the stats.
that was absolutely true at one time. But my gosh, that's been, you know, a century ago almost.
Here's the stats. The average American family with a liberal head of household earns an average of 6% more per year than the average conservative head of household.
Mm-hmm.
However, the average conservative family gives 30% more to charity than the average liberal family. So the average conservative family makes 6% less money.
Oh, wait a minute, though. Hang on just a minute. What does that tell you? That's the most important part. What does it tell you?
Because it tells you who the real charitable people are.
So what you're saying are Democrats have no heart for charity and Republicans do, or conservatives do?
I'm telling you, like everything that the liberals do, it is not what I do, but what I say.
Exactly. Now that is exactly right. They talk a great game about everything, but they do very little.
Because if I call out,
and that's measurable, by the way.
right. So when I call out and say that you're evil because you make too much money, or you're evil because you don't want to give free college or free health care, as long as I call it out and point that you're bad, it's not relevant what I'm personally doing. I am morally superior by virtue of calling it out, and my own behavior is irrelevant.
Let's just say, for instance, just as we'll call it a hypothetical, that we really do have to stand before God in judgment. I would not want to be any of these people. I really wouldn't. I mean, I'm not trying to take a moral superior position. It's just I would be really, really more than uncomfortable going to bed every night, living in that cesspool of lies that's Washington, D.C. I mean, I don't know how you couldn't believe in God. You couldn't believe in final judgment. You couldn't believe in anything and live like that. It amazes me as I get older and think about it more deeply. It just amazes me how you can justify that kind of behavior, because it's never for the good of the people. It's always for the good of the individual who's in power, or for the state. So no
and
wonder
you just bring up a point, and that is the other reason why Christian families donate more money, or not Christian, conservative families, is because conservative families are more likely to be Christian, where the liberal families are more likely not to be, or to not have faith at all. And having a belief in God is a driver toward charity.
Well, and again, guys like Tom Steyer, people like that who are billionaires, even Bezos and go on, all of these lefty billionaires donate to their charity, which is the Democrat Party. That's their charity.
That's their charity, but you can't write that off, though.
And the Koch brothers, donate to the Republican Party as long as they don't build a wall.
Now, Bernie, as you know, is out promoting Medicare for all, and they're all on the Medicare for all. They're not all just on the Green New Deal, but they're all on the Medicare for all.
I'm so sick that the Republicans haven't come up with a replacement. And here's another side to this, Mark, is that everybody's looking for a government replacement. The Republicans should not come up with a government replacement for Medicare for all, or a government replacement for Obamacare. They got to come up with a private sector taking over this, which is what they do best, with competition to lower prices and regulate them properly, and be able to buy insurance across state lines and things, just simple things like that. And they will not do it. They're afraid they either don't want to do it, or they're afraid to do it, or it's just too much work.
Oh, I just got an update handed to me by Patrick here.
Mm-hmm.
The brothers, the two brothers
that the
Jesse Smollett case, those two black guys that were in whiteface wearing MAGA hats.
The Nigerians, yeah.
Yes, they have now filed a lawsuit against Smollett, claiming that he defamed them because he directed them to attack.
Oh, by the way, he did. He did defame them. I mean, they went along with it, but he did defame them.
But this is interesting, though, because now that they have filed the case, there's no way for Smollett to quash that. So now this evidence is going to come out in the public.
One of the things I don't think people understand or have their head around to a certain extent is that this Kim Fox, who was what is she? What is her position? DOJ
prosecutor.
Yeah, but she's not just a prosecutor. She's head of
Attorney General.
Attorney General, right? Our good friend and enemy, our friendly enemy, George Soros, has been going around the country spreading money through all of these elections for attorney generals everywhere. He's given them all kinds of money, all these progressives, and she's a result of one of these elections.
Right.
And this is what you get when you get the George Soros, Marxist, progressive attorney generals coming into power. The law goes out the window and their feelings start to rule.
Now, by the way, who's defending Jesse Smollett? Mark Garagos.
That's right. He defended.
He was involved in OJ, but
yeah,
now,
right.
Who is the other attorney involved in the stealing of the client money with Avenatti,
Was it Garagos?
Mark Garagos.
Are you serious? I did not know that.
Oh, yes, he's involved with Avenatti.
Well, he's going to be coming up before the bar. Maybe.
Yeah, he's probably going to have some issues. So back to Medicare for All. Medicare for All sounds like a great idea, right?
No, it doesn't.
Play along. Come on.
No, it's a horrible idea.
Well, the Board of Trustees of Social Security and Medicare reported this week that Medicare's hospital insurance fund, known as Medicare Part A, will be completely depleted by 2026.
Yeah,
That's
but we
7 years.
have all these multi-billionaires and trillionaires who are going to pay for it. Or if we can't, we'll just go to the UN and maybe they'll pay for it.
So right now, providing health care to citizens over 65, that fund will be broke in 7 years. So let's put the entire nation on that system.
It won't happen. It just won't happen. It can't happen. It doesn't work. It can't, unless you do this, and this is very typical of Washington, not just Democrats, but Republicans, mostly Democrats, but Republicans as well. We'll just go into debt and we'll rack up $100 trillion instead of $22 trillion. And we'll just do it that way. And nobody will notice because the bill won't come for maybe 20 years and everybody will be dead.
But Chuck, you just nailed something. People think we have this $22 trillion national debt.
Oh, I know.
But you just hit the other number. We also have over $100 trillion in unfunded debt, which isn't showing up on the balance sheet.
Yeah, that's true.
And no one's paying attention. We're playing this shell game. Watch my left hand over here with the $22 trillion debt, and don't notice my right hand that's hiding over $100 trillion in debt.
You know why we're not paying attention? Because we really believe that we vote for people who have our best interests at heart. And we trust them as we put them in positions of authority over our lives to do the right thing. And so by advocating that authority, we just let them do what they do, thinking they know what's best, and they don't. What did Mark Twain say about Congress? That said Congress were all idiots, but I repeat myself or something. It was a great line. Yeah. But I mean, this has been going on for a long, long time. In other words, to quote Mark Twain, is a long, long time.
He also said they were like diapers and need to be changed regularly.
Well, they do. They do.
But you were saying something about only people that have never done anything in their life are running for office. Mm-hmm. Abraham Lincoln spoke of that, and his comment was, I find a man with what was his term? What a man with was not. Come on. Think of what word here is. I'm struggling with it here, but his whole comment was, a man without flaws is a man without virtues.
Mm-hmm. It's true. We all have flaws. No one's perfect, and yet we're all held to perfection, especially people in public life. They want us to be perfect. We're all flawed, everybody. And it's very hard for us to accept. It's easy to accept our own flaws, but to accept someone else's flaws is extremely difficult for some reason.
I see the left, and I get attacked with this a lot. The left will come after me, come after you. How can you support Donald Trump and claim to be a Christian? And you try to call people's attention to the Bible. And if you want to use that as your basis, God's man, the men that God chose throughout the history of the Bible were always flawed men. They tended to be very rich. They were usually very powerful men. They were men with many flaws.
Well, look at David. David's a perfect example. He was not rich. He was, a little shepherd kid who did what he did, got put in place, and he made many, many mistakes. I mean, just incredible mistakes. Bathsheba was a well thought out bad mistake. There was no question about it. And yet he got before God, asked him to forgive him, and God called him the apple of his eye because of his ability to be contrite before the Lord. So we all have flaws. It's just that we take care of them in different ways. That was David's way, and he was obviously He had to pay a big price for some of the things he did. And yet at the same time, he's revered by, in the chain of the birth of Jesus. So
Lincoln's quote was, "It is my experience that a man without vices is usually a man without virtues."
yeah, and then it comes down to who am I to judge? Well, I tell you what I feel like I can judge. I can judge what I think is right and what I think is wrong. I'm not going to judge other people on their behaviors and anything else. I'm just going to think of what's right and what's wrong. That's it.
I got a couple more stories here, Rusty, but any comments, any questions we want to take?
We're getting awful close.
Well, the first question is how would you go about getting a cool, like, I don't know, a T-shirt or like a hat or something?
You lie like a Persian rug.
Rusty is I'm going to tell you, Rusty's a shill
Yes,
for
he's
Blunt
good.
Force Truth.
Yes, he's good.
He is, but you can get these fabulous hats, T-shirts. I do like this shirt, by the way.
I do too. I love what it says because it's so true.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can go to bluntforcetruth.com and go to the BFT store, and you can buy all of those amazing items. Any questions before I cover a couple more stories here, Russ?
It's mostly comments today. Margot Martinez, one, says the best thing Donald J. Trump has done is to expose corruption and hypocrisy in government, the media, and Hollywood.
She's right. She's absolutely right. And I'm not sure he meant to do that. It's just the reaction to him has been so strong that they've come out of the woodwork.
So, Chuck, the left is constantly going after the president, saying that he is violating the emolument clause. Which I think is hysterical because most of them couldn't even say emolument.
Yeah, right.
Prior to 2016.
Well, I can't spell it.
So
isn't that a good cleaner? I use that to clean my windows, and it's a floor wax.
So let me explain to people just real quick what the emolument clause is in the Constitution, and it just means that the president isn't supposed to be profiting from foreign powers during his time in the presidency. Okay?
You can't take money and you can't take gifts. So if people give you, if Israel or Egypt gives Obama or George Bush or anybody a golden crown that was in a part of antiquity, he can't keep it. It goes to the state. The state can keep everything.
Right. Now, once you're out of office, Russia can give you $150 million as a donation. So you can come over and give them a speech for 20 minutes.
Right, yeah.
Because that's never happened. Clinton
the most
Foundation.
expensive speech of your life, yeah.
Right. So anyways, their whole premise is that foreign dignitaries go to Washington, D.C. and stay in the Trump Hotel. And therefore, when they pay their hotel bill, paying their hotel bill is somehow influencing the president's decisions.
Mm-hmm.
The president, the Trump organization, has just written a check for $151,470 to the federal government, which represents all of their profit for the past quarter from foreigners staying in any Trump hotel, not just the one in D.C., any Trump hotel. The left,
I personally think that's a mistake, but whatever.
I get what he's doing because
I wouldn't give him a dime.
But you know what he's doing? He's trying to stay above even the appearance of impropriety.
You can't. They'll move the goalposts. Trust me.
So the left is now saying that could have been 10 times or 100 times more.
Well, there you go.
Because he refuses to open up
his books,
his companies, not just his tax returns, his company's books and records, because he's a privately held company. That's why you're a privately held company.
Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot satisfy the progressive left. You cannot satisfy them with anything.
But I want you to understand something here. The president just said I had $151,000 in profit. They're saying it could have been 100 times more that. But they're also saying we need 10 years of your finances because we don't think you're even rich.
Well, it could have been 100 times less than that.
So we think you're lying and you're not a billionaire. Mm-hmm. But we also think you may have made 100 times $151,000 last quarter just off foreign dignitaries.
Well,
does anyone see the hypocrisy in this?
That's
Kamala Harris.
Oh, no, there's not. But wait, there's more. I feel like this is the longest show on earth. It's only an hour.
Bernie Sanders came out and said that the Boston
Of course,
bomber.
we cover in an hour what most people cover in 3 hours. So go ahead.
Bernie Sanders came out and said the Boston bomber needs to be allowed to vote.
Yeah, I heard about this, that all these felons need to be have the right to vote. And, so you have killers, murderers, everything, but they still have their rights as American citizens. No, they don't. When you commit a felony, you lose your right to citizenship, I think. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Yes.
But Kamala Harris is in support of that. She says we need to have a conversation about the Boston bomber sitting on death row being allowed to vote. Now, if he's on death row, why does he have a vote about the future of the country?
Well, why has he got to vote about anything anyway? I mean, this is absurd. And to defend it is even more absurd. And I think that's very thin ice. Who in the world is walking on that water? I'll tell you who it is. It's the community of felons who are walking on that thin ice. And that's who she's supporting, is the community of felons, and Bernie Sanders as well. This is not a large community of people, and yet they will go for these little niche groups.
But think about how far down the road are the Democrats now going against the will of the people?
To allow felons to
right,
vote?
because neither Republicans or Democrats think felons ought to be voting.
Well, nobody in their right mind would think that.
Right, but they are so far down the road on this thing. So I want to make a prediction here, Chuck. Here's the prediction. The prediction is that the presidential election for the Democrats, they're going to get to their convention, and none of these idiots are going to have enough votes to win on the first round. Not Biden, not Camilla, none of them. Mm-hmm. Now, as you know, when you go to a convention, you only have to vote what your district voted the first time. After that, all the delegates, all the precinct delegates now get to vote what they want. Right. This is going to be the 1972 Democratic Convention, and it's going to turn into a free-for-all, because now you're going to have all this negotiation for votes. You're going to have Kamala Harris saying, well, if I give you my votes, do I get guaranteed the vice presidency? Meanwhile, you're going to have Black Lives Matter and Antifa out in the parking lot committing violence because they want the most radical person that's there to get voted in.
I hope that's not true, but it could happen.
Well, when you think about what happens in these things, a candidate, this, the public watches the conventions, and the candidate usually comes out of the convention with quite a few point bump in popularity, right? There will not be a candidate that comes out of the Democratic convention with a popularity bump, because there'll be no consensus. It's going to be a war zone. So whoever comes out of there, this is going to be like electing a pope. They're going to be going round after round after round. And whoever comes out of this is not only going to be damaged from the circular firing squad, they're going to be damaged by their own convention.
Well,
there'll be no bump.
Let me give you conventional wisdom. So Reuters came out with a poll this week that it's on the top of the Drudge Report. It's on the top of MSNBC, CBS, you name it, the whole mainstream media. It's on the top of all of them. So now here is Trump didn't commit obstruction of justice. He did not collude. So he's forgiven, and he went down 3 points in the Reuters popularity poll. Do you believe that?
No.
I don't believe it either. I mean, this is the kind of thing we have to deal with all the time, is this leading us around by the nose by polls and everything else, at how many people were polled and who they were, and especially Reuters, which is just, appalling. But anyway.
So I got 2 more items to wrap up our hour.
Well, you better make it quick.
Well,
our hour just wrapped up.
No, we still got a couple minutes here. First one is that
incorrigible. It better be good.
The Washington Post, your favorite newspaper, has declared that dogs are white supremacists.
No, this is stupid. I mean, that's not a story. That's some kind of weird fantasy. Don't even go there.
Well, I got to fill this in for folks here, Chuck. They're claiming that white people walk around their neighborhoods walking their dogs
around black people.
And this is a secret way that white people talk to each other. This is how we spread information. I'm not making this up.
I know you're not making it up, but they are.
And then when we see our black neighbor with a dog, we go around them.
Yeah.
It gets better. Mm-hmm. And our dogs go around and mark territory, and that's how white people are marking the territory where the blacks aren't supposed to be.
I'll tell you something that's absolutely true, walking a dog on a leash. If you put a dog on a leash and it's aggressive at all, it will protect its owner. If you take the dog off the leash and let dogs run around with each other, they usually are okay. But as long as they're on a leash, they're going to become very antagonistic toward each other. And they will hurt each other if they're on a leash. So that's what if your dog's on a leash, keep him away from another dog that's on a leash, period. Whether you're white, black, or Asian, or whatever you are.
And here's my last one.
Thank God.
The Philadelphia Flyers have now removed a Kate Smith statue from outside the Wells Fargo Center.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Yankees
get this.
did that too.
Kate Smith is famous for her famous version of God Bless America.
I mean, this is a woman who was famous for her version of God Bless America in the 1930s.
Correct. They have now banned the song, and they have thrown a big black sheet over Kate Smith. She now looks like a murder victim.
They're going to call her away. They're going to haul her away on the back of a pickup.
I'm assuming when they haul the statue away, they'll just have like a chalk outline. Because right now they got her covered like she's a murder victim. And the reason they banned her is because 70 years ago, she sang a song called That's Why Darkies Were Born.
And I also think Paul Robeson sang that very same song.
He did sing that very same song.
It's like, okay.
And she sang some other song. So because of that, now the song God Bless America is a racist song.
Well, and that makes her a racist and makes Paul Robeson a racist against his own people as well. So, I mean, you can just throw this stuff up against the wall and some people will fall for it. And especially, when you get into the Yankees, which is a huge corporation, giant corporation that has to please everybody because everybody of every color comes to see them, then they just don't want to offend anybody. And no matter what it is, whether it's legitimate or not, if it's offensive, get rid of it. It's easier just to get rid of it, wipe it clean, and say, okay, we don't do that anymore.
So if black people can't be racist, how can Paul Robeson be racist for singing that song?
Don't make sense out of any of this stuff, okay? Please don't.
The hypocrisy just makes my hair hurt.
Yeah, well, live with it.
It's insane. Folks, I hope you enjoyed the show today. If you did, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you get the show. Remember, you can find us not only on iTunes, but you can find us on the Podcast One app. We are right there on the front page of the app, by the way, Chuck.
Good for us.
I know. We're moving uptown.
Yeah.
And Rusty, thanks for all your work today.
Thank you, Rusty. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time on Blunt Force Truth.